Okay, a very good afternoon to everyone. My name is Dr. Nasser Ali, and on behalf of the Young Professionals Society, I'd like to welcome you all to this webinar on a very important topic. This is the second one, a webinar that we're holding. We had one last week just after the A-level results were announced, and there were a lot of students who were quite upset because a lot of their students' grades were downgraded. So we felt that it was important that we organize this webinar where we have a panel consisting of academics who were there to support some of these students. So that was after the A-level results. We held this, and it was quite, and you can see, if you missed that, you can actually see that on our YouTube channel. If you go to the Young Professionals Society YouTube channel, you'll be able to see that. And it was only yesterday, yes, the GCSE results in the UK came out. And although the situation was different with the GCSE results, there was more students who were more happy with the results. We felt that obviously there will be some who will be a bit disappointed with their GCSE results. So again, we thought that we'll have another webinar trying to help and support these GCSE students who received their results. Some of them might have, got good results and got some offers, places confirmed at different colleges to study different courses. Just to sort of review, this year, as you all know, that there were no exams. And that was basically because of the COVID-19. So people who were studying for GCSEs and A-levels did not take, after Easter, as soon as we went into lockdown, schools were shut and exams didn't happen. And that was one of the first times ever that this situation happened, and students were confused. Everybody was confused. The teachers were confused. The government was baffled as well. And so what the government decided was that they were going to actually calculate these results. And nobody was really sure how these calculations will take place. So obviously it involved a lot of factors. So the teachers had to write reports. They were looking at mock exams and any assessments that the students had throughout the course of their study program. And we did have a week ago when the A-levels were result, where the government ignored the center assessed grades and did their own sort of calculations using their own formulas. And a lot of the students, I think up to about 40% of the students' grades were downgraded. So that was a lot of disappointed kids. And that didn't really work out. But prior to the A-level, in Scotland, the results came out, and again, the students' results were downgraded, but then the government had to do a U-turn. But the British government didn't actually learn from the Scottish and made this mistake. And then even the government had to do a U-turn as well. And then what they said was, okay, we will, for the GCSEs, we will base these grades, will be center assessed grades. They will adopt them. And I think even with the A-levels, they had to go back, so some of the students who were disappointed, their original grades they did receive them. However, they lost out in some of these university places. However, with the GCSE this year, the pass rate has actually increased from the last year, from 70% to 77%. So a lot of the kids have enjoyed the results. They've taken advantage of the fact that of this COVID and calculated results. So a lot of youngsters who got their GCSE results are very, very happy. So what we want to do during this webinar, and that was the format we will adopt from last week as well, is that we have a panel, academics, and we will start off, I will introduce them, and then we will start off with a panel discussion, and we will try to discuss some of these common questions that you may have in your mind, and hopefully through these discussions, some of your answers that you may have, questions you may have, will be answered. And then once after we've completed this discussion, could be half an hour to 40 minutes or 45 minutes, then we'll give you an opportunity for people to actually ask us questions. Now you can ask us questions, there's two ways. One is that in front of your screens, you'll see a chat box where you can type your question. So even during our discussion, if you have a question in mind, you please type your question in that chat box, and myself or Professor Ahmed or Dr. Patel, we will read them and then we will answer them. Secondly, what you could do is you can raise your hand electronically. I'm sure you're all used to Zoom, using Zoom. So if you go in the participant list and I think over your name, there should be some raise hand electronically, or if you can't find that button, just put your hand up like that, and then we can ask you, and then you can unmute your mic and you can ask the question, and then we'll answer. So hopefully, I think that should take us to an hour or so, about an hour, and then we will wrap up. So what I would like to do is, where is this not going? Our panel, we were expecting Rona Barber to join us. Hopefully she should join later on. Rona, we will continue, but then when she joins, she will be with us. Rona is a mentor, a coach, a professional public speaker, is worked with youngsters in the education sector at schools, colleges, and universities, and has a lot of experience and a lot of dealing with the youngsters. We also have my colleague, Dr. Imran Patel, who's based at the University of Leicester. Imran's a program leader in the Masters in Engineering Management, and he's based at the Department of Engineering. And he is quite involved a lot with student recruitment for his engineering degree program at Leicester University. We are also very, very happy to have with us joining Dr. Khalid Khan. Khalid is from Preston, and he's based at UCLan, the University of Central Lancashire. Yes, he's based at the University of Central Lancashire School of Engineering, and he's a senior lecturer in engineering, mathematics, and his research is conducted within the Center for Fire Hazard Studies. So we're pleased to have Khalid. Thank you very much for joining us and giving us your time. And also we have Professor Waqar Ahmed, who is the Deputy Head School of Mathematics.
You missed your Zoom meeting with this Dr. Nasser for the... Oh, it's on. I've left it on.
Can you please mute your mic, please? Sorry about that. So, yes, Professor Waqar Ahmed, I would say firstly, he's the president of the Young Professional Society. He is the deputy head of School of Mathematics and Physics, and he's a professor of nanoscience at the Lincoln University. He was also my PhD boss a long time ago. So we're pleased to have him, and I'm sure all of you, all the youngsters who are joining us today will benefit from his experience and from his advice and his suggestions. So what we will do now is we will, I don't know why button is not working, but we will start off with a panel discussion, and I would, let me just do it like this. Right, so I would put some questions to our panel, and who are free to answer. Anybody is free from the panel to answer the question. Ask the first question is, what do you make of the GCSE results? Because there's a lot of people who say that yes, the pass rate has increased 70% to 79%. Do you feel that the results have been inflated? What do you make of all this? anyone, Imran, Professor Ahmed, Khan?
Okay. Yeah, I can probably have a go at this initially.
Um, can we please mute your mic, please?
Mute your mic.
Mute the mic.
You're not on it, Amar.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Imran, sorry.
I think you're able to mute as well and unmute,
Okay.
the participants. Anyhow, I think from the results, A levels that we saw last week, students weren't happy, people weren't happy, and I think government did take lessons, and it's quite likely that this year's GCSE were predicted grades that were released, and perhaps I also have heard from some schools that it has been slightly inflated to an extent. So don't know how true that is, but I do know that many students are very happy with the grades that they've received this year.
Yes, but do you think that when universities are looking at, or colleges, that, oh well, they've got 8s and 9s and that, but oh, they're not really 8s and 9s, you know, because they've been inflated. Will that sort of go against the student, or will they just overlook that?
I don't know. I mean, that depends on the colleges again, and the individual colleges, see how they look at that, because they have a capacity to fill. And of course, they are aware, because they know what has just happened with A levels and BTEC, particularly here on BTEC's not out yet. But with the GCSEs, with the influx of students coming into their institute, into their colleges, it just depends on, I think, individual institutes as well, colleges, as to what procedure that they will adopt. And of course, they know that it has gone up and it has been marginally massaged, if you can say, the results.
I'd just like to add a couple of points to what Imran has said. Firstly, I think there's going to be maybe a possible issue with more students getting higher grades has going to have an impact on colleges and sixth forms as well, because of a greater capacity now of students actually entering those colleges and sixth forms. And with this social distancing measures in place, this could have an impact on how colleges actually cope. So that's one point to bear in mind. The other point, I think, which is going to be important from the student perspective, though, is going to be that some students who have actually got potentially inflated grades, if they've got these grades, they've got to be really careful, because when they make decisions about going on to studying A levels is a big step up from GCSEs. And if they think they've done really well in their GCSEs, but they've been inflated, say, then they could actually find it quite surprising when they get to the A levels and see how difficult that transition is, because A levels is a big step from GCSEs in terms of technical content, in terms of independent learning, etc.
Okay.
I think this is like an unusual year that we've never had before. So the children that have done the GCSEs now, the universities won't see them for another 2 years, and then things will be back to normal and forgotten about. So if you've got the grades, you've got the grades. What you've lost out on is actually the experience of doing real exams for the first time.
Yes.
So if you've got the grades and you've got good grades, congratulations, well done. You've got the grades, but you have to work hard for the next stage.
And that is a really important point the professors raised there, that these students have actually not sat real exams. So they've not had this pressure of what is it like having, 2-hour or 3-hour exams. So when they move on to A levels and they come across those exams, that could be something that, they have to prepare better for in the future.
Yes, I was watching on the BBC, they were interviewing several students. One of the girls was saying that, she was predicted 3 A's or so and managed to get 1 B in something. But she was so confident that she said, look, I can resit this, and I know my, ability, and I know that I can get an A in this. So sometimes, kids know that if they sat these exams, they would have got these grades. Obviously, those who have been predicted 8s and 9s or 8s, yeah, you know, the grades which have probably been because the GCSEs have been what the teachers are predicted. They are center assessed grades. So, but I think normally we do tend to get this each year when there's an increase in the pass rate as well, even when the exams were taking place.
I think there's also still going to be some problems for some students, even though they're saying that the overall pass rates have gone up. You're going to have some students who are going to be predicted actually lower than what they would have achieved. And that being because, you know, usually the mock exams or earlier in the year, a lot of the students don't actually put a lot of effort in until the last, maybe say 4 or 5 months before the exams. So there are going to be some students who have been predicted grades and they've got those predicted grades now, but actually that's not actually a true reflection on what they actually could have achieved. So there's going to be some people coming out of this slightly disadvantaged as well.
Anything else you want to add on that, or Imran, or we move on?
No, well, just wanted to say that the results that you have, I think largely students would be happy. Of course, there will be those you know, unfortunate ones who probably would not be happy. But the next step is, what do we do with these results? What is it that you want to do? I think we're going to come on to that now. What are the options with what you have?
Yes. Okay, so if we move on to that, how important are GCSE grades for securing university places? So, you know,
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah.
Yes, you could do.
Yeah, so basically when the university receives your UCAS applications, you're looking for evidence that the student is going to be successful in that particular course. See, the only piece of evidence that you've got that are facts are your GCSE grades and the mock results that you've got. All the other things is your predicted grades, your references, your personal statement are opinions, your teacher's opinions. So if you're looking at the facts, GCSE grades are very important. And of course, every university wants you to have English and maths to enter the degree qualification. And depending on the particular degree you want to do, they will require so many A-star grades. Or depending on the subject, GCSE grades become significant in you getting an offer of a place to study subjects like dentistry or medicine. So you need a high number of good GCSE grades.
What about if someone's not done so well, you know, in school in GCSE, but then go on to do A-levels and don't really well there, you know, in the A-levels?
So I mean, so basically, for most degrees, you'll be able to get in with, you know, moderate, good GCSE grades. You'll get an offer. But for subjects like medicine or dentistry or the subjects that are in big demand, they have to make a decision. So they can't make a decision just on the mock exams. They got to make a decision basically on the GCSE grades you've got. So if you've got say some A's and some B's, and your mock results are good, and the teacher predicts you some good grades, you still haven't demonstrated that you're going to get the top grades in A-levels. So you wouldn't really have that much confidence in the reference or the personal statement if you've done badly in the GCSEs.
Just to add to that, what Professor's just said, I mean, students have to be really, really sharp from the start. And GCSEs are the point where they really have to, even before they've actually sat their GCSEs, I think it really even goes back to year 9 when they're making their options, that they've got to be really, really sharp in terms of what careers they want. And just confirming what Professor said, when universities look for courses which are the really competitive courses like medicine, dentistry, or pharmacy, say, they go back to the application and they look at the GCSE results. They are a fundamental criteria that universities look in actually selecting students. So students, if they want to get into these very competitive courses, do really have to have really high GCSE grades. Otherwise, they're not in the same category and they're just put to the side. Even if they're doing well in their A levels, they're going to look at their GCSEs as a starting point.
I think the advice to the youngsters is that they need to make sure that they work hard throughout GCSEs, A levels, and you know,
Yeah,
and even
if you haven't got the grades, it doesn't mean it's the end of the line for you. There's always you can learn the lesson from the grades that you've got and say, right, okay, from this point onwards, I'm going to work really, really hard. I'm going to make sure that I get top grades at my for A levels, and I'm going to do everything possible to get into a career of my choice. So sometimes people that pick, say, medicine, their GCSE grades are not good enough. When they get really top A level grades, they still might not be able to get into Manchester or Leicester. So a lot of them tend to go to Czechoslovakia or Bulgaria or some of these countries to do medicine, and then they come back in the UK and practice in the UK. So that's like your second option. And if you still don't get into these medical subjects, then you got to kind of lower your ambitions a little bit and say, okay, I'll do pharmacy. Okay, if you can't get into pharmacy, I'll do biomedical sciences. So not everybody's going to be able to do medicine. But it doesn't mean the medicine is the only worthwhile career. There's many other worthwhile, enjoyable careers. So you can get into a lot of these careers. So you can work in hospital as a biomedical scientist, or you can work in radiophysics. So there are other careers that you can get into. But like Dr. Khalid made that point, if you want to get into the top careers, you have to start early. At about 13 or 14 years old, you've got to make your mind up, saying, this is what I want to do, and I've got to get the grades.
And also we see that nowadays there's a lot of smart youngsters out there, really bright people. And they all, even GCSEs and A levels, in GCSEs, they get 8s and 9s and A stars and that. So there's a lot of competition as well, isn't there nowadays?
Yeah.
So, when people apply for, as you mentioned, some of these big degrees in good universities, I'm sure they all have these A stars. That when they're applying.
Yeah, I mean, I was the founding member of UCLan Medical School. So I was one of the first 2 or 3 people appointed in that school, and we were looking at people's grades. When applications come in, most of them, that they're going to get the grades. So they've already got the GCSE grades. You're pretty confident most of them are going to get all the A's. So they'll have the grades to get in. But then you got to think, okay, how do I distinguish between 2 people that have going to get the grades? So you got to say, okay, what work experience have they done? How have they demonstrated a desire to do medicine? Are they going to be a good doctor? Do they have the personal communication skills to become a doctor? So I remember some young lad came in, and they have to not just have a couple of members of the panel. They do these round robins where they go to different stations, and you get asked instantly the questions. So and each panel asks you different questions. So then they might ask you about, okay, what do you know about the treatment of COVID? And you've got to kind of make up your answers straight away, and it's got to be an informed answer. It can't just be you just make it up and blah, 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 blah. So this young man, he answered all the questions, but the way he was kind of dressed, his language was very crude. And my colleague said to me, oh, can you imagine this guy being, I can't imagine this guy being my doctor. He just doesn't look the part, he doesn't talk the part. So all these transferable skills, communication skills, being the part and showing an interest in the subject. So if you're going to do medicine or dentistry, you have to show interest in the subject, make sure you read the articles. And then some of them, they've said, they came and asked them, well, what's your interest? What's your area of interest in medicine? And they'd read some of my research papers. So I'm interested in nanomedicine. I've read your research papers. You're doing work on asthma and drug delivery. And I'm thinking, wow, this guy is interested in this subject. So you're kind of confident. Almost all of them you are invited for interviews, you're going to get the grades. So it's what extra do you have that, you know, the others don't have.
So Imran, if we had some students who would apply to your school in Leicester for engineering degree, uh, you'd be looking obviously the A levels up, but how much would you be looking at the GCSE grades as well? Because obviously
I
this
think,
webinar is based for for the GCSE students.
yeah, I think for engineering, excuse me, we don't put a huge amount of emphasis on GCSE results. For engineering, we do, but not as much as for as it would be done by medicine. So A levels stroke BTEC, which comes out next week, we would look at the predicted grades and also look at the GCSEs and any work experience. I've had a number of admission queries where the grades were on the borderlines, but because the students had 1 or 2 years or maybe 6 months of work experience in a relevant industry, I would take that person on. Now, I mean, I know we were talking about engineering and medicine here, but last year a UN charter stipulated that about 60% of jobs have not even been created for the teenagers yet. Now, these jobs, if you want to earn more money than a GP or a dentist, then go and do coding, data mining, cybersecurity, AI. That's a huge business to be in. And if this student, and the way I see it is, during my time in school, and the colleagues that I know, if you enjoy biology, chemistry, you tend to lean towards more on medicine. You're naturally good at that. I never liked biology, hence I'm an engineer. I like more on the physics and maths and woodwork and metalwork and geography aspects. So I became I would say, a good engineer, an automotive engineer. So also the passion for the subjects that you have, the GCSE results that you have in front of you. If you're not good at biology, chemistry, that's fine. That doesn't mean you are inferior. It's just that you are good at other things. So there are a lot more other subjects and disciplines that you can get into. So it's not the end all and be all if you have not quite met the GCSE grades for to go into A levels to study medicine later in your years.
Okay, let's move on to some other questions. If my GCSE grades are poor, what can I do now? There'll be some people, such students, who are disappointed. Professor Ahmed, well,
Yeah, so if you've got the past grades, then obviously that's the grades you've got. But if you failed them, then maybe you can resit them. So if you've got an English grade which is lower than what universities require, you'll have to resit that, or maths grade lower than the entrance requirement, you have to resit that. You may also, instead of doing A levels, you might think, I want to do a different type of qualifications that will be a bit easier than A levels. There's a massive jump between doing GCSEs and then going on to A levels. So if you've got a grade C in mathematics and you say, right, I want to go and do maths at university and I'm going to do A level maths and further maths, I think, unless you got a poor grade because you were lazy, but really you're bright, then you can pick it up and get a good grade at A levels. But if you tried hard and you got poor grades, then I wouldn't pick that subject for A levels. So you pick subjects for A levels that you think you are good at, you're interested in, and then it aligns with your future degree that you want to do.
Just to add to that, if I can, a lot of the sixth form colleges and a lot of the sixth form schools as well, they have their own sort of criteria for actually students going into things like A levels. And students usually, not always, but usually, if they want to do an A level in a particular subject like history or mathematics, they're usually expecting them to have at least a grade B at GCSE before they actually, take these students on to do A levels in those particular subjects. So students who have got these lower grades, or what you're saying is didn't get the grades that they thought, they have to look around. If they're having trouble actually getting onto the A levels, that they want, maybe they have to then repeat these GCSEs and improve their grades. Or as Professor Vakas says, there are other alternatives that they could do, the vocational courses like the BTEC level 3s that are open to them. But again, with those, there's a minimum number of GCSEs that the students have to have, maybe about 4 or 5 of them at grade 5 at least, before they can actually do those courses as well.
And it's extremely important that students actually pass GCSE mathematics and English, even though they might not want to do A levels in them, but it's important that
it's an entry. It's an entry requirement. If you don't get the mathematics or English, you won't get into university.
So in which case they would need to resit them.
Yes.
English and maths anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, clearly, if they've got poor English and maths grades, i.e., they haven't got an equivalent C, which is now a 4 or a 5, they must resit them. If their aspirations are to go to university, they must sit those and make sure they've got those. Otherwise, later on, they will have problems.
Okay, just to move on, can one appeal their GCSE results if someone's really confident, a student confident that they made a mistake or so? Or
well, you have when you're making an appeal, you have to basically evidence. It's not just say, okay, I feel, so you got a grade B and you say, oh, I feel like I should have got a grade A. Basically, what evidence have you got that you would have got a grade A? So you can't go on people's opinions and feelings and emotions. You've got to go on facts. Or if there's some procedural issue, or the exam board hasn't done something properly, and you can demonstrate that, then you can be successful in the appeal. But normally, if you just appeal because you feel you got a lower grade than what you expected, these appeals don't succeed, and there's no basis for appealing. But if there's been processing, if the exam boards haven't followed certain processes, or the college hasn't done something right, then you can appeal.
I think in this particular year, though, there's going to be a potential problem here, because usually a student takes an exam, they get a grade, and if they're not happy with that grade, they appeal against the grade, and that exam paper can be remarked. So it gets remarked, and then you can see whether they've scored better or worse. In this case, these were actually just estimated grades or predicted grades from staff. So I don't know how we're going to appeal against that. I'm not really sure what the process there is going to be this year.
I can tell you a personal story of where I was involved in an appeal. I used to teach this girl A-levels from India. She's very, very bright, and she got, I think she got 2 A's and she got a B. And then I was confident that she was going to get an A, and so I asked the girl or the father of the girl to say, why don't you get the exam paper remarked? So they remarked it and they still gave it a B. Then I said, well, get the exam paper back off them so we can look at the marking. So we looked at the marking, and some of it were like definitions of something. So when these exam papers get marked, they have a script, and they have the actual examination paper. So if it matches, they go tick, 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 tick. Yeah, and because there's so many to mark, you can miss some things.
Yes.
So there was a definition of something in chemistry, and the definition was right, but the wording wasn't exactly like what the model answers were. So the father asked me, he says, do you think this definition is right? I said, yes. Then he went to another one and said, do you think this is right? I said, yeah, I'm sure it's right. Well, they marked it wrong. Why have they marked it wrong? I said, well, it's right. So he says to me, would you be prepared to go to court to say, this is right? If I took the, exam board to court, would you be prepared to go to court? I said, of course I'd be prepared to go to court, because what's right is right. Then he wrote a letter back to the exam board and said, look, I've had this checked by, university professor, and he said, this is right, yeah, and you've marked it wrong, yeah. We're prepared to appeal or go to court against that decision. And then what happened is the exam board actually overturned that mark and gave her a grade A, and she got into medicine. So basically, you've got to be very confident and then get the paper back and then, you know, then fight it. But normally, 99% of the time, you can't win the appeal. Maybe this year it's difficult even more.
That was probably an exceptional case, you know.
So there are people that win appeals, you know, but you've got to have the facts right. You can't win just based on speculation.
But this year, Professor, what's going to happen is if a student appeals against a certain grade, that's appealing against what the teacher assessed them as able to have. So that's going to be a little bit more subjective and difficult to actually work out, really.
Yes, I think we might have answered this question. We've discussed this about universities looking, do they just look at A-level grades or just GCSE grades important too?
So just to add to the point that Imran made earlier, obviously, if you were going to certain universities, so universities have league tables. So you got number 1 all the way up to number 100. So there'll be a lot of universities that might not look at the GCSE grades for certain subjects. However, as you go higher and higher in the league tables and you aspire to go to the top universities, then they have to look at the GCSE results because they want the top candidates to, and entry requirements for engineering or at the top universities are equally as hard as mathematics, as hard as medicine.
Okay, let's move forward because we want to complete this discussion and open the floor for students to ask some questions. Is it also important where you do your GCSEs and A-levels? Which school, which college, or sixth form?
Generally, I mean, from my experience, you've got students can go from generally from any institute, as long as they're capable, and they can go to the highest, most prestigious universities. So in general, I think if the students have got the aptitude and the capabilities, they're not restricted in where they can go. It's just whether they're determined to go there, whether they've got aspirations to go there, and whether they're actually, motivated to go to the highest sort of institutes.
Yeah, I think just to add to Dr. Khan's comment there, it might help the school and college where you do your GCSE and A-levels, but I know of people, students who have secured position in Cambridge and Oxford and who have not come from renowned colleges, but the grades were there. The grades were there. So it's, and I think it'll be unethical for universities to dismiss students from a college which is not very highly ranked.
Okay, perfect. That's good.
Just a further point on Dr. Imran's point there, which is students should be aware of, that universities now, they are actually being encouraged through the government initiatives of widening participation. So the top universities, like things like Oxbridge or the top Imperial College or the Manchester universities, they have to show now how they're actually widening their participation to incorporate students from all backgrounds, from all postcodes. So students should have that confidence that they can actually, no matter where they are, in which part of the country, which college, they should be able to, if they've got the same grades, if they've got the same capability, should be able to go to the same institution.
Now, when should I be thinking about what degree I should do? I mean, they're doing GCSEs now. Students have got their results. They're thinking about college and A-levels and BTECs and that. Is this the right time, or prior to when you're choosing your GCSE options?
I think the earlier you can be thinking about what you want to do and be passionate about it, then the better it is. The later you leave it, the less restricted your choices are going to be. And if you look at any particular field, if you look at the people that are in the top of the fields, they probably decided very early on what they wanted to do. So if you look at, say, arts and music and sport, if you look at the top people, they wanted to be football players or they wanted to be something from a very early age. If you start late, you don't have enough time to learn the basics to be really in the top of your field. So the earlier you start, the better, but at the same time, it's never too late.
So
I know somebody, just give you an example. I know a very good friend of mine. He wasn't interested in doing medicine, for example. And what happened is he did his O levels in them days, and he got poor grades. Then he did his A levels, and his grades got better. Then he did a BSc at Manchester Metropolitan, and he got a first class with distinction. After that, he did a PhD at Imperial College. Then he went to work for BP, then the Health and Safety Executive. So he moved up the ranking. His daughter, she got 10 A stars, which are the top grades, and 1 A. And she was worried about that A, and she got 5 A's at A level, which was the highest grades. And she went to Cambridge to do medicine. So the father said, I want to do medicine as well. So he started applying to different universities. I think he wrote to every university in the UK, and eventually he wrote to Leicester. And the admissions tutor invited him for an interview, and he said, oh, yeah, you know, I might consider taking you on. But the condition for taking him on is he had the PhD, he had the degree, he had to redo his A-levels and get the A-level grades to get into medicine. So he got into the Leicester Accelerated Medicine Program. And now he's a doctor, and he's got his own hospital in India and everything. So if you're determined enough, it's never too late.
Yeah, and just to add further to that, if you look at, you know, a lot of the students at the age of 13 and 14, let's be honest, lots of students, the majority of students, are not really sure what it is they actually want to do as a career. They're not actually sure at that point. A few are, but majority aren't. But the thing that they should bear in mind is even something as simple as when you're making your GCSE choices at 14, is it around year 9? If you choose, say, a double GCSE science compared to a triple science, even that could have an impact in the future. So when you say, when should I be thinking? I think the earlier, like the professor said, the earlier the better. And even when you're making your choices at GCSE level, I think that's really important that you make the right choices there. It's not that that's the end of the story, but it really does help to be better prepared at the beginning.
So what my nephew is a dentist now, and since he was a little kid, he wanted to be a dentist, you know. And I said, do medicine. No, I want to be a dentist. And throughout his life, he's always got the highest marks. Yeah, he's always got, like, you know, 10 A stars, and he's got 4 A's at A level, and he's never ever kind of been second in any exam. And he went for interviews all over all the dental schools and everywhere, and he didn't manage to get an offer. So then he went abroad. He went to Prague or something, did 1 year, and then he came back and he got a place to do dentistry at Dundee. And the reason he didn't get an offer is because his communication skills were not up to standard. So they said, oh, what did you do for your work experience? Oh, I worked in the hospital. How long did you work there? 2 days. What did you learn? I learned about this. So it was like, because his communication skills were poor, he didn't get an offer. But then when he went abroad and he became more independent, and he started improving his communication skills, and he got a place, and now he's a successful dentist. So you have to be a balanced person to be able to get into the fields. And even if you get into a degree in engineering or a degree in a particular subject, and then you might get a PhD in that particular subject, but if you want to prosper even after that, you have to have these soft skills and communication skills and how to manage conflict and that kind of stuff as well on top of your grades.
Okay, let's move on. So how important is work experience should I get a part-time job during summer? What types of jobs should students be looking for?
Yeah,
So,
I think, sorry, not only for the sake of experience or getting into a university, I think students should get a job, should get a part-time job to become a better person, to know how the money is earned, how to manage the money, time, and also improve the software skills, like Professor Ahmed just said earlier on. And this would also, of course, help in their application in colleges and universities later years. So you would become, I would say, a more rounded person having a part-time job during the summer, ideally in the industry that one is intending to pursue the career in. Now, I've got lots of examples of my own, but I won't divulge in them just on this forum, maybe another time.
Yeah, just following on from that as well, I mean, certain professions, like we mentioned already, the very competitive professions like medicine and dentistry, the experience part, the work experience part is actually very crucial. If the students don't have that element and they can't show that they've got this element, then basically they'll not be that competitive when it comes around to actually being the applicants picked for interviews. So work experience in certain areas, certain competitive degrees is absolutely crucial.
But
like, I'll
sometimes
give you an example. My daughter wanted to do optometry all her life. So she went to get work experience in Asda. And she spent about a couple of weeks there. And I said, oh, what was it like? He said, oh, all they're saying is, oh, go and make a cup of tea, Aisha. Go and do this, go and do that. And all I can hear is better, worse, better, worse, better, worse. And that's all she heard. And she said, I definitely do not want to be an optician. So she ended up choosing pharmacy as a result of like a negative work experience. So now, alhamdulillah, she's got a PhD in pharmacy and she's very successful. And so in a way, it could be fine if you want to be an engineer and then you kind of get work experience and you hate it, then, it might help you switch your decision.
sometimes in certain professions, it's quite difficult to get work experience. For example, you mentioned about the medical. It's sometimes quite difficult for a 15-year-old or a 16-year-old to go and work in the hospital or in that environment. They won't sort of allow a youngster under 16 or under 18 to be there.
But I think I'm assuming you can volunteer so many hours per week. I'm assuming that is the case in medicine as well. I think
no, I'm saying that because I know several sort of youngsters who were involved in doing this DOP, the Duke of Edinburgh Award.
Yeah.
And for experience, 3 months, they need to do some experience. So some of them had expressed an interest to work in some dental surgery, pharmacies, hospitals as well. And for insurance purposes, because of their age, they weren't given that opportunity.
No, I do concur with that. I mean, a lot of the students do have difficulty, and it comes down to a lot of the times really is, what kind of connections do you have sometimes? If you've got the right connections, the right people, that can help. If you haven't got the right connections, I think you just have to keep knocking on the door. The more you knock and the more doors you knock on, hopefully something will open for you.
And one of the purposes of this Young Professional Society is to build up the networks so that we can know, okay, if you want work experience in manufacturing technology, we know somebody, maybe we can put you in contact with that person. And because we've got the connections, they might, let you have that work experience. So I think it's about connection, it's about network.
Okay.
I know somebody who got a first-class degree in law from Russell Group University, and he wanted to become a barrister, and basically he couldn't get a sufficient work experience towards the end of his degree to get into that profession because it was very, very hard and he didn't have the connects.
Okay, let's press ahead. Is it true that A-level exams are the hardest exam? Sorry, Imran, I think you need to unmute.
Yeah, they are the hardest to date. The 18-year-old. It gets harder. It doesn't get easier. But this is my advice to students is, there's typically two groups. Those students who are in college and in universities. This is what I call the delayed gratification for them, where they're sitting in classes at college or universities and they're comprehending the fact that some of their friends are working and driving around nice cars and saving money. So that's instant gratification. But whereas with students who are studying GCSEs, you've just done GCSEs, another 2 years of A-levels, another 4, 5, probably 6 years of university. But the next 5, 6, 7 years, work hard, and hopefully next 50, 60 years would be easier for you. So A-levels are one of the hardest exams. It's like 2 years of study crammed into 2, 3 months of exams. But the university doesn't get any easier either. I think it's a platform that prepares you.
Yeah, I think what's happened is the gap between GCSEs and A-levels is a big gap. And to navigate that gap at a young age is difficult when your mind isn't as mature. So it's psychologically hard to kind of bridge that gap unless you work extremely hard. You're not probably used to it. But when you get into the degree of your choice, you see everybody working hard. So you tend to follow the crowd and you work just as hard and you get your degree. Well, at A-levels, you don't know which direction you're going, and the difference between GCSE and A-level is big. So it's like climbing up the ladder, and the step from that is too big and hard for many people.
So the advice to those students who are going on to study A-levels is to work extremely hard.
Okay. There's a saying that the harder that I work, the luckier I get.
And Professor Amin mentioned about this point of soft skills. How important are soft skills like communication skills? Now, as Professor Amin said, that the Young Professionals Society, one of our focuses is on communication and try to help youngsters improve their communication, speaking skills, public speaking, writing with clarity and impact, becoming more confident. So this is a very extremely important area and skill, these soft skills. I mean, okay, you may have your grade 9, 8s and 9s and that, and A-stars in A-level, but it's important, equally important, to have the soft skills as well in order to become successful.
Yeah, so
I mean, these things that I think students have to realize that once they're actually going into the workplace and they're going to be working, that these sort of skills are going to be absolutely crucial. When you work generally, you're generally working in some form of some kind of team. You need to have these sort of important skills like teamwork, good communication skills, how to deal with people. You're going to find different people with different sort of attitudes, different sort of approaches. So students have to be able to deal with all those sort of different scenarios that they're going to face. So it's not just about grades. Grades are important, but then when you come to actually real world scenarios, communication skills, soft skills, they actually become very, very important, because if you can't work as a team member, that might cause you a massive problem wherever you are.
Okay, I think let's end our panel discussion here, and what we will do is we will go on to. So I see that there are some questions that some people have asked. I'm just trying to sort of read through some of them. Let me see. Okay. Aisha said, if the mock test was 9, always on the top set, but given 8, do you think to ask if need look into as its only grade difference? And 2, prediction, difference 2, prediction was 8, but given 4, as teacher is surprised by it, as my daughter was predicted 8. Sorry.
So the question is, if you've got a lot lower grade than the teacher predictions.
If the mock test was 9, always on the, and the students always in the top set, but was given 8, do you think they should ask to look
Well,
into it?
There may only be 1 mark difference between 8 and a 9.
Then I think the second question, prediction was 8,
You got 4.
but they will go 4.
Yeah, that looks a bit. It looks a bit, big difference there. So I don't know what the teacher's rationale for that is. What the difference.
Yes, well that is a big difference, isn't there? From 8 to 4. So maybe they could look into that.
So if you discuss it with the school and say,
Yeah.
look, then the teachers will have more details on how they calculated these grades. Maybe it's an error.
Yeah, it looks
And
that
needs
way, I
looking
think.
into.
Yes, definitely. And I think the other, what should parents do when the college has secured place by seeing their school mock test and school report, but because the grade has come less than what was predicted, they can't offer the place in there? Any chance to ask for provisional hold on that place? And as it's summer holiday, by the time they rectify or appeal, it will take time. By that time we get the result, we will lost the space in colleges. They have limited place. Maybe they need to get in contact with
I think if you get into contact with the college and say this is what you intend to do, then they may be expecting you, if you overturn the grade and get the grade that was needed to get in.
Okay, we've got some physicists here in the panel. Is there any advice for students who choose subjects like physics, who want to study physics in university? Any advice on work experience in this area needed? And if so, what type of work experience?
So work experience that's related to physics will be looked at positively. So if you worked if you had some work experience in a hospital, in sort of biomedical imaging or something, then people are, oh, that's a very relevant work experience. Or if you've done some material science, again, that's important in physics. If you've done some astronomy, so if you've got an interest in moon sightings and stuff like that, then you think, oh, this person is really interested in physics. And if you worked or you've gone into, where you've actually used telescopes and stuff like that and got experience there, then that experience is useful. But if you got experience
Just to add to that, from what Professor said, I mean, there are certain courses that the students have to be aware of that require work experience as absolutely essential. And there's a lot of courses that actually work experience is just desirable. And so I think physics probably comes under those which you probably say desirable. It's not absolutely essential.
Yes.
So I don't think the students should be really too worried if they can't get any work experience in physics, because it's more of a desirable rather than an essential area.
Yeah, and I think it's important to make sure you get good grades and you're interested.
Yeah.
Hannah, is there any advice for students who choose subjects like physics, who want to study physics in university? Part 2 of that question, any advice on work experience? I think this has been asked, hasn't it?
So physics is a subject that requires a lot of mathematics. So if you're going to pick physics to do at university, it's important that your mathematical ability is top notch. If your mathematical ability is poor, then you'll find that degree extremely hard. So if you do A-levels and you've done, say, chemistry, biology, physics, and you haven't done A-level maths, you'll find it hard to get a grade A in physics at A-level, but at university, if you get into university, I think it'll be a hard degree for you to progress in and get a high classification. So physics and maths, they go hand in hand.
Yeah. So another question, is physics too hard in A-levels? What does it offer as grade?
I think physics is, again, if you haven't done mathematics and you think you're going to get a grade A in physics, it's going to be extremely hard for you to get a high grade in physics. So if you're doing maths and physics, you've got a better chance of getting a higher grade. If you're doing chemistry, biology, physics, it's, even though you got a high grade at GCSE, it's unlikely you have the mathematics knowledge to get a high grade at A level. If you then go and do physics at university, then it gets even harder if you haven't got the mathematics.
We have a question here. As we are going into year 9 in September, when do you think we should start revising for GCSEs? So they're going to sit there.
So some people, it's like, how do you define revision? Some people think revision is a week before the exam, you get your books out, and you do all-nighters and you revise. So that's what they think revision is. Whereas for me, soon as you kind of done something in school and you covered a topic, for me, revision, you come home, you study it, you try to understand it, you do some questions, and then throughout the process, you keep going back and keep that knowledge fresh. So if you learn something once, it's important not to forget it. So revision, the earlier you start your revision, the easier it will be to actually get a good grade. And the more you practice the exam papers, the easier it is for you to get good grades. So revision, I think, should start very early. So if you start in year 9, then that's perfect, yeah. But the later you leave it, the harder it becomes.
I think this person was the second part of the question was, what about the physics craze in physics? What opportunities do they offer?
So obviously there's lots of branches of physics. So we've got people that do astrophysics. So they go into astrophysics. And again, there's also, if you want to get into engineering, if you've got a physics degree, it sets you well to get an engineering type of job. Medical physics, you can perhaps get a job in the hospital. There are physicists that work in patent offices. There are physicists who've done a management degree and they've gone very high up in their career. So if you can supplement a technical subject with a management type subject, you will progress in your career a lot quicker.
Sorry, just to add to that, Professor Ahmed's message is that you need to be passionate about maths, basically, to do physics.
Yeah, you have to be good at maths, and then later on you have to be good at English as well. So,
I mean, just to give you an example, my nephew wanted to go to the University of Manchester, and he dropped physics in his A-levels. He found it too hard. So, Manchester Uni offered him a degree with the condition that he has to do a foundation year. So that's 4 years now. So that was a requirement for the University of Manchester that he must have a physics, but he dropped that. So if for engineering, again, a lot of universities will require physics, maths and physics, as well as English, of course.
Question here, does anyone know the way for appeal? Has school has summer holidays except email the school? They're not able to. I think there should be people in the schools, maybe by email, by telephone.
I think administration people will be there, so there will be somebody there at this period of time. They're not. There will be people there.
Yeah, sure. So I think maybe email them,
email them, go and knock on the door, do whatever you need to do.
Because some students were able to actually go to the schools to receive their GCSE results.
Yeah.
So obviously the stuff, but some people students were emailed, the results were emailed.
I think there will be somebody at the school now for you to make contact. So you have to make contact with the school.
What is a good career after studying computer science?
I think, I mean, I'm closely related to computer science, our school is. So there is a huge area for studying computer science and career after that. So one of them is, part of it is, the cybersecurity, possibly a bit of coding. And if you know any of the languages, Python, C++, again, computer science is very diverse in itself. Website designing, data mining, AI. So these are the areas one could perceive to be in after doing the computer science. I know for the last 10 years or so, there are a lot of people who are doing contract work, those who have got degrees from computer science. I don't know how long that's going to sustain. But computer science would excel you and would put you in with, oh, I think I've lost connection. Hello?
No,
Yeah, you're okay. We can hear you.
Okay. So I have students who have graduated in computer science and work at Rolls-Royce, Bentley, Arup, and many other blue chip companies.
You could also get into robotics and
Yeah.
fields like that.
Yeah.
Just to add further to that, if you've got, say, a mathematics degree or you've got a computer science degree, you've got plenty of opportunities and very good opportunities, even working for government, because government have the, big areas in where they're looking at security and like Dr. Imran says, where, you're looking at things like cyber security these days. So with these kind of degrees, mathematics, physics, computer science, the governmental institutions, they can be good places for job opportunities as well.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other questions? Maybe somebody can unmute the mic and ask.
Somebody's asked, what GCSE do you need to do optometry, to become an optician?
Yeah, become an optician.
Yeah, so you definitely need either mathematics or physics, to become an optician. So if you've done biology and chemistry and psychology, then it's difficult to get into optometry. So you need math or physics to get into optometry.
With A-level in biology, chemistry, psychology, and law as fourth subject, can we drop it in second year? What other career can we do, as the medicine is getting very competitive field except pharmacy?
I wouldn't say pharmacy is not competitive. It is competitive still. So you've got biology, you've got chemistry, psychology. So
law is the fourth, which they're talking about maybe dropping it in the second year if things.
So they can't. If they drop it, they can't do. It'd be hard to do law, but still possible.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? Maybe anybody wants to unmute and ask the question.
Hi. Yeah, I want to ask a question.
Okay.
Firstly, I want to say that big thank you to the highly intelligent panel for making this event possible. It's really helpful having the interaction, the Q&A. I wanted to ask that when applying for competitive courses like, for example, medicine or dentistry, the main requirements are doing chemistry and biology, but for the third subject, it can be any subject. So most people tend to do maths, but if I want to do, let's say, psychology, would that be considered as a soft subject? Or I want to know your thoughts on that.
Many universities, they consider psychology to be a science type subject. So it's your third science. So I know many people that have done biology, chemistry, psychology that have got into medicine.
But would they not need to have this maths to support the maths in the chemistry?
So the maths, I think the maths in physics is much harder than the maths that you have to do in chemistry. There is some maths in chemistry, but it can be, if your GCSE grade is good in maths, then you could do well in chemistry without the maths.
Just to add to that, sorry, I'm looking at the website of the University of Manchester for medicine. This year's requirement is chemistry or biology, / human biology, and one of these subjects, chemistry, biology, human biology, physics, psychology, mathematics, or further mathematics. So this is the current requirement as per University of Manchester as it is today.
I also had a look at the University of Oxford for the medicine, and it's compulsory that you need to do A-level in chemistry and biology. So the third subject doesn't need to be sort of maths. It could be psychology or some other subject as well. Okay.
Yep, that's what the Manchester Uni says. It could be physics or psychology or human biology maybe.
I think what's important there for the student is if they're going to do chemistry and biology, which is usually a must, the third subject generally has to be what they classify as a sound subject. So they need to probably check with the universities to make sure that if they're going to choose something which is something classified as a soft subject, will that be acceptable? And if they've already done their research, find that out first, then you're not making any mistake and you are making the right options really for the third subject.
Also, the other thing is that sometimes when students are doing their A levels, just to sort of give themselves an advantage or so, they would like to do a fourth subject as well. And that fourth subject is sometimes it's like they'll say, okay, we'll do Urdu or we'll do Arabic or we'll do Bengali or something like this, you know, as a fourth subject, which is a language subject, which is their language, and it's easier for them to get that. Would that be seen as an advantage for them when they're applying for these degrees at universities, that they've got the fourth A level, which is a language?
So I know somebody who wanted to do medicine, and basically they did chemistry, biology, mathematics, and Urdu. And my advice at that time, obviously things change, was you need to make sure you get grade A's in the A levels that you do. So forget about the Urdu and make sure you get grade A's in these. So what happened? He goes, no, you know, it's my hobby to do Urdu. I said, the time you're spending to get a grade, you know, a grade A in Urdu, if you spent it on mathematics, it'd be better spent. So he ended up getting 2 A's and a B, and then he didn't get a place into medicine, had to do pharmacy. So the effort you're putting in, you might as well put it into a worthwhile subject than in this. And if you're interested in Urdu, you could always take Urdu and learn it, but not at a time when it's critical for you to get grade A's in the main subjects. And if you get all A's, then you've got no problems.
Yeah, just to back what Professor says, if you are a really, really top student and you've got the capacity of actually doing 4 A levels and you are that top student, then that probably isn't an issue. But as Professor says correctly, if you are going to go for a very competitive subject like dentistry, medicine, you are better advised to focus on the key subjects. Make sure you get the top grades rather than risking this losing a grade here and there, and then your opportunities disappear.
Any more questions?
Yeah, I think how long should a work experience placement be? You know, is 2 days seen as enough, or week, 2 weeks, few weeks, month?
So basically, I mean, if you've done a day or two, it's not, I don't think it's sufficient, you know, because you're just doing it to tick a box. You have to try and show that work experience you've done, you've got an interest in the subject. So it's got to have, you know, at least a week duration or longer, or best thing to do is do the work experience in the summer when you've got a bit of time and you can go in, learn, and they'll probably ask you questions about your work experience and what you learned. If you've not been there long enough, and it's very, very short, it's better than having no work experience, but it's probably not the optimum work experience.
Okay,
No,
I
think if the students are going to go for these very competitive courses which require work experience, say dentistry or medicine, they've got to definitely show that they've got enough work experience. But the other thing they've got to remember is not just putting, I've done this, and this. I think what applications and universities are looking for is, what did you actually get out of those work experiences? Now, you can only say and make reasonable deductions if you've got enough work experience. You couldn't do it with 1 day or 2 days and then tell anybody, oh, I've got this out of this work experience. So it has to be a reasonable length of experience.
And there's some students during this lockdown now, they've looked for some opportunities to do some virtual work experience as well, you know, whatever that nature of the work is, but they've had some kind of experience, so which is good. Any experience is good. Do we have any other question? I think we've gone over our time. Okay, I think there is one question here. We'll take this as the last question and then we'll wrap up. In chemistry, she got an 8 and in maths she got a 7. But she doesn't like maths and she wants to do dentistry. Maths will be hard for her?
I think it's a big jump up in maths, but you don't need maths to get into dentistry.
No.
You need chemistry or biology to get into dentistry.
Yeah, and as we said in the previous discussion, as long as she's got another third solid subject, she should be okay. She doesn't necessarily need mathematics for dentistry.
Okay, I think we should wrap up here now. Thank you very much for joining. Thank you to our panel for their time and their advice and the suggestions. And I'm sure everybody has found this useful. If there are any further questions that you would like to ask us, please do feel free to send us an email. I can type here in the chat box now the email address. And hopefully we will be able to get back to you. And as I mentioned at the start, we will be uploading this video on our YouTube channel. So please feel free to watch and forward to other people who have not been able to join us today. And we wish you all the best, and work hard for your A-levels. And hopefully we will see you next time when the results come out, and hopefully we'll have another discussion webinar, and we'll bring more people in our panel and to help you, to support you. So thank you very much, and thank you very much to all our panel, and have a great evening, and stay safe. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.